Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with a mix of Neighbors from Hell and revenge stories. In today's title story, OP has to deal with one of the most entitled and crazy neighbors we have ever come across. Without wasting any more time, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, Neighbor tore down our shared fence and put up a new one inside my garden. So, I had been living next to my neighbor for about 12 years. To be honest, it's a very quiet neighborhood and not much goes on. People don't hate their neighbors, but at the same time, nobody is throwing parties and borrowing cups of sugar. It is important to note that me and neighbor have a fence right on the line of our property. Now, I don't know much about property of the fence, but my assumption is, since the backing of it is on her side, that it is technically her fence. In my mind though, it is just both of our fence and we can be equally responsible for it. Now, with that out of the way, we need to take a little trip back to the start of the pandemic and the lockdowns. It was not a fun time for anyone, me included. So, I decided that taking up a hobby would be something that could keep me sane. I settled on gardening so that I could actually do something outside instead of being cooped up in the house the entire day. One thing that I learned fast was that gardening as a hobby was not exactly a cheap one. A lot of care and supplies have to do into it, and that can quickly dwindle your wallet. I was fortunate enough to still have a job and being able to work from home. So for me, the cost was worth it for my sanity alone. The only area in my yard though that seemed ideal to plant the garden though was right near my side of the fence. The ground was best there and the ratio of sun to shade seemed good from my research. So that was how I started my flower garden and spent the next few months tending to it and watching it grow and bloom. I had never exactly had a green thumb, so watching something like this actually work brought a huge smile to my face whenever I was feeling down. I would sometimes catch my neighbor peering over the fence and looking at my flowers. I just assumed that she liked them as well and wanted to admire them. I was actually glad that she was doing it because she lived alone and anything to bring people joy makes me happy. That was when all the trouble started though. Despite doing everything right, my flowers were starting to suddenly die. I found it especially odd because they seemed to be doing it in small patches. I thought that maybe an animal was getting into them or something, but when I looked in the yard, I never saw anything. My son was nice enough to bring over and install an outdoor camera for me so I could see what was going wrong with my garden. It seemed extreme, I know, but keep in mind, this was my only real sense of happiness lately and I didn't want to lose it. The next day when I checked the cameras, I saw that in the middle of the night, neighbor walked into my side of the yard and started to spray some of my flowers with something. The picture was not clear enough to show exactly what she was doing, but those same exact flowers ended up dead. Now, I was at a loss at what to do because I was so tired and exhausted from the state of everything, I really didn't want to sue her. 2 days later though, I heard noise and saw that she had ripped the old fence down and put a new one up a few feet closer to me than the old one. This Karen not only destroyed the rest of my flowers, but now the shared fence was on my side of the property. With these two things combined, I was furious and decided to call the town to come and see what she did with the fence. Now, because of the pandemic hitting hard in my area, it understandable took a long time for someone to come out there. I was fuming every time I looked at her. I wanted to give her a piece of my mind then and there. Instead, I set up a little test that would help me get even more revenge later. I planted a few cheap flowers right next to where I had the camera situated, and for those people thinking she wouldn't be that dumb, you are wrong. She came to destroy those too, and now there would not be any doubt that she was the one in the other videos and the spray in her hand was plant killer. I made copies of the videos and sent those to the police saying that someone had been trespassing on my property. The hardest part was waiting, but boy oh boy was it worth it when the day finally came. I was watching from my house when I saw a man looking over the fence and taking out a little spray can to show exactly where the property line was. As I already knew, the line had the fence well into my side of the property. I didn't go outside, but I had my window open for a nice spring breeze. I heard pieces of the conversation of my neighbor saying that the fence had been there for years and him saying that it clearly was not true. It turns out that she did not even bother to get a permit to build a new fence at all, let alone one on my property. She was severely fined for this, and I received a letter in the mail saying that while unfortunately nothing could be done about it right now, they plan to rectify and oversee a valid fence being put in. For the time being though, it would have seemed like my neighbor won. It turns out the police actually took what they found on the videotape very seriously, and about a week later I had a knock on my door. The police were there asking me questions about everything that happened and for my side of the story. I could see neighbor was outside with other policemen and I was really curious to know what she said to them to still be smiling. According to her, I had hired her to be my gardener and was trying to frame her. And I gotta say guys, respect to this entitled neighbor, she definitely has an impressive imagination. A very creative liar. Anyway, I explained about taking up a new hobby and that I had never heard of a gardener that came out at 2 in the morning. Obviously, with the clear evidence on my side, she was arrested. I saw her back home a couple days later, but found that she had a ton of fines to pay between what she did with the fence and to my garden. I wanted to sue her for the damages that she caused, but I didn't have any receipts and didn't have full evidence and was told that a judge might not find in my favor. I was also asked if I wanted a restraining order, and while most of you will tell me I should have, I didn't want to bother. It was clear that I had gotten my revenge and she learned that messing with me was a bad idea. She knows that stepping another toe on my property will result in her getting another arrest for trespassing. Since then, I went back to not really seeing my neighbor as I did before. I don't know if she paid off the fines because that's between her and the city. All I know is that I was able to start a garden on the other side of my yard and all of those flowers have been blooming perfectly. And wow, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, this is one hell of a satisfying story. However, I gotta admit, if I were in OP's shoes, I'm not sure how well I could sleep at night. To me, it would be really upsetting to have such an insane neighbor near me, and I would always have to think about what she might do next. Anyway, if you enjoy the stories about insane neighbors, then please don't forget to like the video if you want to support the channel. Thank you so much in advance, your help is very much appreciated and it helps my channel tremendously. The next one is titled Dad's Sound Cannons Blasted a Noisy Karaoke Bar Out of Business. This happened a few years ago, but its memory always gives me a revenge cucumber. Our family home is right in the smack of an open grassland in the outskirts of a mid-sized city somewhere in the Philippines. Although our neighborhood is sparsely populated, small businesses have sprouted all over since it is situated along a main thoroughfare heading to and from the city center. Among these is a crap-hole karaoke bar, or videoke in the local parlance. This karaoke bar was located right beside the driveway leading to our main gate. Our house is surrounded by tall concrete walls and adorned by iron spikes on top, which is typical in our country. It first started out as a small daytime cafeteria, usually catering to truck and utility drivers and personnel. Things were pretty vanilla since it opened, and its existence never really bothered us, save for the occasional 16-wheeler blocking our driveway, a honk or two, and they would be moving along. Later, however, the management decided to reorganize the place into a cheap open-air bar, putting out tables beside the road and extending its operating hours deep into the night. Along with the revamp came this machine from hell. And guys, unfortunately the image is not available anymore, but I suppose it is some kind of karaoke machine, some music machine, whatever. Either way, that is when things began to go bonkers. With just a few drops in the coin slot, customers can now belt out standards from Engelbert Humperdinck, ABBA, Bee Gees and Frank Sinatra. Alcohol would later up the ante at nighttime. A boozer's rendition of My Way is not exactly my idea for a lullaby. This drove my family nuts. Although most of the time the karaoke's decibel level is somewhat bearable inside the house, it's the murder-inducing singing by William Hung wannabes that really got into us. And adding insult to injury, the bar would sometimes put the karaoke on full blast when they feel like it, mostly at night time. My parents first went for the diplomatic approach to address the situation. They politely asked the owner, a pot-bellied police officer, to at least bring the sound volume down to bearable levels, especially at night time. He initially agreed and things went without a hitch for the next few weeks. We later noticed, however, that the bar had gradually increased the volume until it was back again to pre-agreement levels, even louder than ever. When confronted by my mom, the asswipe owner just dissed her and said that she is being an elitist who is trying to put him out of business. The words he used in our local language are harsher, but basically the same idea. A few nights after the confrontation, the bar was hosting a gathering of a local truck drivers association with beer flowing on the side of the road. That karaoke is blaring louder than ever. This, coupled with singing and shouting drunken people, created an atmosphere similar to a cornucopia of hyenas and banshees having fun together. This was the last straw for my dad, who suddenly flipped from a relatively nice guy into a douchebag-coated douchebag with douchebag filling. Dad later told me he had been plotting his revenge from the time the owner insulted my mom. He was just waiting for the right opportunity and motivation to do it. He began dismantling our home sound system, a component hi-fi stereo system, and told me to set it up on our patio by the garden. He went to the storeroom and brought out 2 very big speakers, the type which you often see at parties and other special events, wired them into the sound system and put on their stands and placed them at our gate. As if that was not enough, he opened all the doors of our 3 cars and he then told me to come up with a perfect song to use and save it in 4 USBs, 1 for the stereo system and 3 for all the cars. With the USBs in hand, he then ordered 2 of my siblings and I to each get into the car and, upon his signal, to simultaneously press play and turn the volume to max. Hironobu Kageyama's Chala Head Chala began blasting them out of their wits. I used the original live English and 2005 versions of the song. The 05 version was the most badass of them all. Chilling effect-wise, it took 4 tries before all sound systems became synchronized. After our noise barrage started, I slowly skedoodled to our gate and saw the same boozer truck drivers who were gleefully singing moments ago now turned sour-faced and constantly making dastardly looks at our direction. The karaoke bar owner later approached our gate and angrily demanded that we cease from whatever we are doing. The bumpkin even brandished the fact that he is a police officer and can make our lives hell, which, in hindsight, might have caused real trouble for us. Out of spite, he attempted to topple one of the big speakers from its stand, but was a tad too short to reach over our gate. My dad, the big ol' hot and Tessie, just smirked and went inside the house. In less than an hour after our sound cannons blasted, the party ended in a puff and some of the customers begrudgingly walked out while hurling invectives. My sister insists she even saw the 2 guys pelting stones towards our house. Much later, the karaoke was silenced and the bar closed for the night, hours earlier than usual. The karaoke bar still continued with its shenanigans after that night, albeit never going full crazy mode with karaoke's volume again, at least during the evening. One of the female workers, the owner's mistress I was told later, verbally slandered me a few days later while I was driving out of the house. I was a law student when it happened, so I used some legal speech to intimidate the douchebagette instead, or so I think. We were already planning to commence legal action when it suddenly boarded up about 2 months later. One of its waitresses who used to work for my mom told us that the bar got a bad rap among its regulars. Remember, this place was frequented by truck drivers. Because of that night, word spread and caused the business to slow down. That and some internal strife within the management eventually led to the bar's ultimate demise. The next one is titled, "My always late ex-friend made us 30 minutes late to a surprise birthday party, so I sent her to an expensive restaurant with an empty gift card to prove a point." A few years ago, I, 22 female, had a friend, Alex, 24 female, who was always late. She was also the kind of person who would tell you, "I'm on my way," when she was not, in fact on her way. That one trait of hers caused me quite a lot of inconvenience. One time we both were invited to a surprise birthday party for our mutual friend. Clearly written on the invitation was something along the lines of, "Be sure to arrive at 6 p.m, don't be late or you will miss the surprise." Come the day of the party, she and I had agreed to meet at my house and drive over together. Around 5 p.m, I asked her when she would be at my place. She told me she would be there around 5:30, which was great because the party was about 30 minutes away. At 5:30, I called her to ask where she was and she told me she had not even left yet. She then promised that she would be there in 5 minutes. I figured that was okay because she lived fairly close by. Long story short, she ended up getting to my house at 6. I was mad. We left immediately and made it to the party around 6:30. By that time the surprise had obviously taken place and the party was in full swing. I mentioned to her that I was really bothered that she had been late. Not only that, but she had strung me along and lied to me and prevented me from being on time. She responded by saying things like, "It's not that big of a deal," and "We were only 30 minutes late," and "Don't be so dramatic." At that point, I was sick of her being late and her attitude. Being late, lying and downplaying someone's feelings are all rude. So I went to a nearby steakhouse and took a gift card without putting any money on it. I wrote $30 on the card and gave it to her a few days later, telling her it was a random gift for being my friend. A few days after that, I got a text from her asking if I was sure I activated the card. I told her yes, I was sure, and asked her why she was asking. She responded by saying that she had gone to the restaurant with some friends without her purse and she tried to use the gift card but it was not working. It was at that point that I gave myself away by responding with, "Oops, I guess I was wrong, and it's not that big of a deal, and you're only $30 short." She immediately picked up on what I was doing and I proceeded to receive a few very angry texts about how embarrassed she was and how rude and disrespectful I was for doing that. "All of this because I was just a few minutes late?" Blah blah blah. I simply responded with, "So you are saying if I tell you one thing and then do another and it directly impacts your life in a negative way, that is disrespectful? And if you get mad at me for it and I downplay your feelings, that is rude? Am I understanding you correctly?" She did not respond and I found out later that none of her friends were willing or able to cover her dinner, so she had to stay about 30 minutes later for her parents to rescue her. We didn't talk much after that. Hopefully she learned a valuable lesson. I sure had a great time teaching it. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support and I hope to see you again tomorrow.